Hi detectives, you've got new assignments this month. I was really excited to hear all of your favorite police shows, and I'm gonna send you an email that kind of gives you a rundown of what they were. But do you know that nobody said Get Smart? And I always loved it when he talked on his shoe phone. I always thought that was really fun. Nobody said Dragnet either. There's a lot of Blue Bloods and Law and Order SVU, but that's okay. That's why I'm going to send it out. So if you want a new police show, you can find something new to watch. This month, we're going to make flying geese, and we're going to make a 24-inch block. So first of all, the flying geese are going to look like this. They're going to be in these colors. You're going to make 5 of them. In your kit, you have a 7 3/4 inch.
You mean 5 different colors, not 5 flying geese.
Correct, yes, 5 different colors. You're going to make 4 flying geese in each of 5 different colors. You're going
That's
to get
20.
It is 20. That's a lot. And that's not all the flying geese you're going to make this month, so fun times. You're going to get really good at it. We are giving you a 7 3/4 inch square in each of these 5 shades of blue turquoise. You are going to go to those squares you cut last month. I think they're 4 1/4. And you're going to pull out 20 of your background for your flying geese. And you are going to use the same method that we used last month for making flying geese. It's the same method Birdie uses in our story. And you're going to make all of these, okay?
So those color ones, we don't cut.
Nope. You trim them down to 3.5 by 6.5, and then...
No, I mean the beginning ones you said.
No, those are provided by us. So those are squares that are 7 3/4 inches already. You don't have to do anything to.
No trimming.
No trimming. Okay, so once you do that, you're going to stack them up, pack them up, and put them away and hang on to them. Don't lose them. And then we're going to move on to making a new block. And the block finished actually looks like this. It's based on a block from that this quilt is made from. And this is actually the quilt from my bed at home. And I made this quite a while ago. This is the quilt that made me a quilter. And those of you who know the story about me buying fabric that never made it into the final quilt, ta-da, this is that quilt. But what I wanted you to see here was we're going to be making several 24-inch blocks throughout the mystery quilt. If you enjoy making the block, it's actually a really great way. You can make a big quilt. I only had to make 9 of them. And sometimes you get those quilts and they're like, you know, make 112 or 50 or whatever. You only need to make 9 blocks and you can make a pretty impactful quilt, okay? They're just sashed together and have a couple borders. And that is what the block is gonna look like when we're done, but it is gonna be in different colors. This is what's in your kit this month. This is navy fingerprints. Everybody has this. This is a 4-inch strip. Do not straighten it. You're just gonna cut this into 4-inch squares. The amount are in your instructions. This is the pink background fabric. This is background for this block, okay? Not background for the whole quilt, background for this block. I think you have 1/3 of a yard of this, and this is pretty explained pretty well in your cutting directions. This is your brown, and this is navy. And some of you are going to have a different print on your navy than this. Both of these, one of these is 8 inches and one is 9, and both of them I want to clarify the cutting directions just a little bit, because you, at one, the brown, you start by cutting off a 6.5 inch piece.
How wide is that piece?
I knew you were going to ask me that. I think this one is 9 inches and this one is 8 inches. So,
Yes.
okay. So, the first thing you're going to do is cut off a 6.5 inch piece. And I tell you to cut across your 9 inches. So, this isn't a 6.5 inch ruler, but you're going to cut your 6.5 inches this way, okay? So you're going to lay it on your mat, and you're going to measure using your mat, which you know we don't like to do unless we absolutely have to. You're going to lay this and you're going to cut 6.5 inches. Okay? And then you're going to trim it down to a 6.5 inch square. Then it tells you to cut off another piece, another piece, another piece. You're going to cut this way towards your selvage, okay? You're not going to cut off like we normally do a whole strip. If you cut a whole strip like that, you're not going to have enough fabric. So both of these pieces are cut that way. Your navy is a width of fabric piece, but you're not cutting strips. You're going to lay it on there. First trim off a selvage, turn it around, and you're going to cut across, okay, the whole way. The rest of it is covered in your cutting directions, but I did want to make sure that you understood don't cut strips, okay? Your pink fabric, your pink background fabric, you do cut strips, but these guys are cut a little differently, all right? Okay, once you get going, this square is constructed of 3 different blocks. This is block A, this is block B, and this is block C. And I'm going to tell you about them real quick in reverse alphabetical order. Block C is, there's only one of them. It's the center of the block, and it's a 6.5 inch square of your brown fabric. You're going to cut one, you're going to set it aside, and your block C is done, okay? Block B is just more half square triangles, or no, more flying geese, excuse me, oh my gosh. It's more flying geese. And you need to make 4 of these blocks. I'm missing one, here it is. So, one set of flying geese of each combination of fabrics is going to be plenty. So you're going to make flying geese, you're going to have a 7 3/4 inch square of your pink background fabric and 4 1/4 inch squares of your brown fabric. And you're going to make one set of flying geese out of that combination, and it will be enough to get the 4 block Bs that you need. The same is true, you're going to use a 7 3/4 inch square of your navy fabric and 4 1/4 inch squares of,
And their navy fabric might be different.
and your navy fabric might be different, like I said before. And then you're going to have 4 1/4 inch squares of your pink background fabric, and you're going to make one set of flying geese out of that combination, and that will be enough to do all 4. And then these are 3.5 by 6.5 inch rectangles of your navy fabric. These guys are, it's the same as the flying geese that we're making throughout the quilt. These are 3.5 by 6.5. They're trimmed to 3.5 by 6.5. And then all you do is you sew these guys together and you press your seams towards the brown. Okay, so my seams are pressed this way towards your brown. Okay, so you make 4 of those, that's block B, and you'll be good to go. Block A is a little bit more piecing, but it's not complicated. Block A is made up of half square triangles and squares. Okay, so you start out with we're going to talk about half square triangles. You start out by making half square triangles out of these. These are 4-inch squares. You're going to make half square triangles out of the pink background fabric and your navy fabric, and it tells you in your directions exactly how many you need to start with and how many you'll finish with. That isn't sticking in my head right now. You're also going to make half square triangles out of the navy fingerprint fabric, that's this one, and your navy other fabric. And then you're going to make sets of pink background fabric and your navy fabric, your navy fingerprints, okay? So I'm going to review real quick how to make half square triangles. You're also for this block going to use 3.5-inch squares of pink and navy, and this is a 3.5 by 6.5-inch rectangle of your pink background, okay? We're going to set those aside for the moment. All right. You need your Tucker trimmer. I've got a piece of very fine grit sandpaper, because I'm going to show you something. And you're going to start out by drawing your lines on the back of one of your combinations. So this combination is the navy fingerprints and the navy. I drew the lines already on the back of the navy fingerprints. For this combination, I'm going to do it on the back of the pink. So I've got a friction pen and my magic wand. I'm laying my magic wand from corner to corner. That scored line down the middle is going from this corner here to this corner, to the opposite corner. I'm going to hold it and I'm going to draw lines. And the sandpaper will help your fabric stay put. It doesn't, you can see it's not rubbing back and forth and shifting under my magic wand.
It also helps to keep the magic wand in place.
Yeah, it does. We do have this in the shop. You can just buy one piece of it. You don't have to buy a whole package, okay? And again, if you don't have a magic wand, remember you're going to draw a line from corner to corner down the middle, and then you're going to draw a line 1/4 inch on either side with your regular ruler. So you end up drawing 3 lines, okay? These guys now we're going to take to the machine and we're going to sew on each line. I knew I had the pins out for a reason. I'm going to put a pin in so it doesn't shift on my way. Okay. I've got a foot on my machine that I can easily see my lines. I found my foot pedal. Solved that mystery. Where did my foot
And
pedal
what
go?
stitch length?
1.8. Okay. And now I just sew on the line. Grab my other one, make sure it's all my raw edges are together. Whoop. And now I'm going to clip them apart and then do the same thing again on the other lines. I don't need pins this time because that other line of stitching is going to anchor it in place. Okay. And once those are all nice and clean, we're going to cut them apart. If there was any shifting, now would be the time to rip your stitches out and make sure you get your squares sewn together nice and neatly. But once you've got them sewn together, we're going to cut them from corner to corner. And then we're going to press them. Whoop. Got a lot of stuff here today. Now I'm going to press these open. And I left these pressed open in all of them. It's easier to use your tucker trimmer if they're pressed open, and it's also less bulk in your final block. And the other thing is you can always press them to one side later if you need to. Two more.
So you get to change your mind.
Yeah, you do get to change your mind. Sometimes we film these videos while we're open, and then we have people have questions. Okay, so once we've got our half square triangles, now we're going to trim them down to 3.5. Let's make sure. Yeah, 3.5. Okay, so we're going to use our We're going to use the 1/2 inch side of the ruler. We're going to use this diagonal with this side up so we can see. And then we're going to use the 3.5 inch lines here. Okay? So I'm positioning my ruler so that my 1/2 inch moon is up here where I'm going to cut. And I've got a little bit of fabric hanging over the 3.5 inch line here, okay? And then what I'm gonna, and I've got a little bit of fabric hanging off here and a little bit, tiny little bit, but a little bit hanging off here. So I'm gonna cut here, and then I'm gonna get in your way here because there's absolutely no way I can do this. In there, okay? And then I turned my fabric, not my ruler, and I'm trying to get this line of my ruler along the edges I just cut, and the diagonal line here on my seam, okay? And then I just cut again across the side and the top. Okay, and that's how you get the perfect 3.5 inch squares. So I'm going to trim up all of my half square triangles. I've got a little bit of fabric here and here, and my seam line down the middle. And then I turn the fabric, not the ruler. Whoop, there we go. And then we trim the second side. There's that one. 2 more. go. Last one. If you get scraps under your ruler, it makes it harder to lay flat. Two-thirds of a yard. Anybody making the Santa pedal pop pillow, you need 2/3 of a yard of SF101 to stabilize the backing. Okay, so now we're going to talk about how to put this block A together. And this is in your directions. You've got color diagrams, okay? And it's got pressing directions as well, okay? So the first, let's make sure this is oriented the same way as it's gonna end up like this. The first row is, and we're gonna add these guys back in here. Look at all these squares. This is the part of quilting that really, I think is really kind of fun, because now it's just a big puzzle. How are we going to get all of those little pieces to look like this? Let's leave them matched up. That helps. So the first thing we do, the first row is this. It's pink and navy, half square triangle. And then next to it, you're going to put the navy with the navy fingerprints. And then next to that, you put navy and pink, okay? And you sew this together with a 1/4 inch seam, and you press all of your seams towards the piece that is navy, fingerprints, and pink. All right, and that's row 1. Row 2 is your navy and navy fingerprints, and then a 3.5 inch square of navy, and then a 3.5 inch square of pink, and you sew those two together with a 1/4 inch seam, and you're going to press all of your seams towards this navy fingerprint. And then row 3 is a half square triangle made of navy, fingerprints, and pink, and a 3.5 by 6.5 inch rectangle. You sew those together, and you're going to press your seam towards the pink. Okay? You have to be careful, and you have to make peace with the fact that you're probably going to rip something, because it is very easy to accidentally turn a half square triangle the wrong way, and it makes a lot of sense when you're doing it, but then you put it together in the final block and it doesn't make as much sense. Okay, so again, sew it together, press this way, sew this together, press the seams this way, sew this together and press your seams that way, and then all of your seams will nest, okay? And then you just sew your rows together and you press your seams open, okay? So when you're done, see these all nested, and you press your final seams open. And then once you have 4 of those made, this is really cool. We're going to let that be the bottom corner. Then you're going to take your blocks, your 4 block A's go in your 4 corners. And your pink all points to the middle. And your B's, your block B's, go between them. And this is row 1. So you'll sew row 1 together, and you're going to press your seams one way. And then row 2 of your final block is this and this, with your block C in the middle. Press those together, or sew them together, press your seams. And then your final row, It's these guys that, there's all of this. And press your seams again that way. And then your final seams, when you sew your 3 rows, these will nest. These seams will nest. You'll sew them together, and these final seams you'll press open. And you have this big, gorgeous block. And you also have 20 blue flying geese. You have lots of directions. Your cutting directions are in there. And if you have any trouble, you know how to get a hold of me. You can email me. You can call the shop. You can stop by. I do want to reiterate that if you come by, if you're having a problem, if you need more fabric or something, bring the fabric you have so we know what fabric to give you to replace everything. But otherwise, I know you guys can all do it. It's just a really fun combination of flying geese and half square triangles, and I can't wait for you to bring in your final blocks so we can put your name in the prize bucket. See you next month.